Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by the legend himself, Doug Casey. First of all, thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to talk a bit about something that I recently spoke with Stephen Moore, who is head contention for the Federal Reserve. He's been the Fed critic, but basically he just wanted to lower interest rates. Now we're looking at interest rates going down. We see it in Australia, Britain, many places, and a lot of people are concerned that we're going to see negative interest rates in the near future. What do you think that would mean if we did indeed see something like negative interest rates?
The concept is completely insane. I used to think it was metaphysically impossible to have negative interest rates. In effect, pay the banker for holding your money while the currency that it's denominated in is inflated out of existence, and while you have real risk that the bank itself is going to fail. So it's completely crazy. It's a desperate effort to keep the economy from collapsing, which it's going to cyclically do. It's way overdue, as a matter of fact. You couldn't pay me enough to be on the Federal Reserve Board. Not that I would ever be invited, because I would want to abolish the damn thing. The Federal Reserve Board serves no useful purpose. It's an engine of inflation. It should be abolished.
Well, and a lot of people will say, and we've all heard this for many years, you guys have been saying that it's going to collapse for a long time, and a lot of people would then say, well, we have been in a crash. It's been a slow incremental depression since 2008. Do you think that we are in kind of a depression right now?
Yes, we've got to define the word depression. A depression, by one definition, a good general definition, is it's a period of time during which most people's standard of living drops significantly. Now, if we use that definition, the average guy, the average middle American, his standard of living has been dropping since about very early 1970s. This has been camouflaged by two things. Number one, there are more scientists and engineers alive today than have ever lived in all the world's history put together. And they're inventing marvelous things that are increasing capital and increasing people's general standard of living. The second thing is that people are wired like squirrels, and they understand that they have to produce more than they consume, the average guy. So those are positive things. But there are a lot of negative things going on, the growth of the state being the main one, and the distortions that it causes in the economy. The most important of them is the government financing its huge deficits by printing up money and making it possible to finance them by lowering interest rates to unreasonable levels. So this is going to end very badly. As to exactly when, I don't know. I hope the stock market doubles from here. It'll be an even bigger crash when it happens, but in the meantime, party on.
Well, the fundamentals are off the table due to the level of manipulation that we see. So they seem to just be papering it over with debt and more debt, and it just seems like it's creating a more massive bubble. So when I say, I hope it collapses soon, people go, well, you must hate poor people. And for me, it's like, no, I don't want this to get any bigger because it's going to hurt a lot more people when it comes down. But I wanted to ask you a bit about what actually is wrong with fiat central banking currency, and the idea of maybe it's not that it exists. It's the fact that people are charged under the social contract usury debt. What do you think about the concept of these currencies existing without government and people voluntarily deciding to buy into such a thing?
I think that's going to happen, and that's what the cryptocurrency revolution is all about. People are using Bitcoin as a money. Now, it's not a very good money at this point because it's too volatile for practical purposes. But the good thing about Bitcoin is that it can be completely private, totally unlike the US dollar, and it gets you out of the banking system because all of these major banks all over the world are bankrupt. So Bitcoin is better from that point of view. I think that the world is going to go back to gold. The reason I say that is because gold is the only financial asset that's not simultaneously somebody else's liability, and it's not directly controlled by a government. Because with a fiat currency like the dollar, they can create as many as they want, they can change the price of money. This is actually immoral for this to happen, as well as very destructive. I think the change is going to come sometime in the next few years when the Chinese and the Russians, but other countries too, that don't like to have to use the dollar, which is the currency of their adversary and a floating abstraction at that, they're going to come out with a gold-backed ruble or yuan, and it's going to cause a lot of selling of the dollar and buying of those things if they can prove that they're honest and stable. That part's questionable. But the world really should be using just simple gold as money, depoliticizing money. That's what it's all about.
And of course, gold is spoofed like silver, but by a bunch of bankrupt banks, insolvent banks. So that seems to come up a lot. I wanted to ask you, though, you mentioned gold, and I think this is an important discussion to have, is the subjectivity of value versus intrinsic value. A lot of people think that things are intrinsic, that gold is valuable because it's physical and not because of its use case, scarcity, etc. What do you think of the notion of people saying something like Bitcoin isn't backed by anything versus just the subjectivity of value overall?
I was a somewhat late adopter of Bitcoin because Aristotle in the 4th century BC, gave 5 reasons for what makes a good money. It has to be durable, divisible, convenient, consistent, and very important, it has to have use value. And I was uncertain of the use value of Bitcoin. It just seemed like a speculative vehicle. But actually, Bitcoin's main use is as a transfer vehicle. In other words, if you use the SWIFT system to move money from the United States to Britain, it's costly, it's slow, the government knows exactly what you're doing. Bitcoin is practically free and it's instantaneous. And it's going to be a very good alternative for the citizens of about 75% of the world's countries that use figment of your imagination currencies like kwaches and pulas and dirhams and so forth. They're going to go to Bitcoin or other cryptos in a big way. So I don't know if I answered your question directly enough.
Well, no, I think that's really good because I think a big part of it is a lot of people say things need to be backed by a specific physical thing despite having that use case. So, for example, colonists going to African colonies and getting pearls, and the natives in those colonies didn't care about the pearls. They gave it away for almost nothing, but those colonies went back home and sold it for a large amount of money, and that creates subjectivity. So there's a great YouTuber who used to go around by the name of Mark Dice who would go on the streets and offer people silver or a chocolate bar.
I know, I've seen that. And they usually took the chocolate bar instead of the 10-ounce silver bar. I know, it's a sad testimony on the human race.
Yeah, it really is. And that says to me subjectivity of value, not objective. It's not there like a magical number floating over.
No, I agree. All value is, in fact, subjective. What something's worth is entirely subjective. No argument for me on that.
Yeah. No, I just love to hear it from you because that seems to be something people older than 40 or 50 seem to be attached to, generally speaking, attached to physical value over the idea of something like Bitcoin, which obviously isn't physical, but is carrying some kind of subjective value that people like. But with that said, I want to move on quickly to the idea of inflation versus wages. We hear all these people talking about raise the minimum wage, and then when they do, people flood out of town, businesses close, big monopolies survive, and the same people that they want to go after, the big monopolies, do off best. I wanted to ask you about the impact inflation has on wages and people's ability to pay rent.
Well, inflation is the enemy of the little man and the friend of the rich man. It's destructive towards society as a whole, but within that context, the little guy gets hurt a lot worse. Because the rich guy gets that money first. He's connected in New York and Washington. He gets to drink from the fire hose of new money first. And the rich guy can hire the lawyers to get the laws changed, to help him out monetarily, accountants to take advantage of the tax laws. He gets into the kind of investments because he has sophistication, benefit from inflation as opposed to get hurt from it. So inflation is devastating for the average guy, for the middle class. And these fools that are talking about modern monetary theory, like that 29-year-old Puerto Rican waitress who knows nothing but has heard about this. It's actually going to destroy the social fabric of the U.S. if they get what they want.
It creates a huge culture of dependency. People that think that, well, they spend most of their childhood in a public school, and they look at the public school system as mommy and daddy, so they grow up with that notion of they spent more time with a government as their family than their own family, and it just becomes like this intrinsic thing within them. But I wanted to finish it off then about talking about getting rid of the state entirely and creating a voluntary system. Are we able to do that via revolution or evolution of technology? What do you think is the best way to go there? Unwittingly creating something that people support, or actually fighting with torches in the street?
I think we should treat the state the way the post office should be treated. It serves no useful purpose. It's expensive. You have alternatives to it. So you don't have to firebomb the post office to get rid of it. All you have to do is not use it, and it'll disappear, especially as the government itself goes bankrupt. And this is true of most government things. What I'd like to see people do is actually examine in their own mind. Everybody says they hate politicians, but they go out and vote for the lesser of two evils. I don't do that, because the lesser of two evils is still evil.
You don't agree with Walter Block and people like that on that when it comes to the lesser of the evils?
Walter's a good friend of mine. I love him like a brother. But look, I might be talked into voting in a local election, but voting in a national election, your vote counts for about as much as a grain of sand on a giant beach. In addition to the fact it gets you in another government computer bank, you have to hang around a government office all day to register and vote. No, I'm not interested in it. And anyway, it's morally wrong to vote. So no, I don't.
It's morally bankrupt. It's logically inconsistent with the free market. And I wanted to finish it off then by saying you've been an influence on millions of people over the years. You've been doing this for a very long time. Many of us have seen you on Donahue and shows like that way back when. And I wanted to ask you, you've got a lot of books. What are you working on now that people can check out and support?
Thank you for asking. Go to my website, internationalman.com, after my first book, International Man. It's very interesting. It's free. We have a new and unique blog every day, so that's one thing they should do. And I would urge people to buy my novels, because I'm through with writing fiction, nonfiction. I'm writing fiction. So I have a series of 7 novels. The first 2 are done, Speculator and Drug Lord, in which I try to reform the unjustly besmirched reputations of increasingly politically incorrect occupations. Read Speculator. It's got a lot about the mining business and gold and bush wars in Africa and how to make a lot of money in the third world. So
I like one of those things, making money. I don't like the Bush Wars, but I think we can all agree that that's going to be a very interesting book. I urge everyone to check the links below this video to purchase Doug Casey's latest works. And I really appreciate you talking about this criminal entity, central banks, and government with us. It's always a pleasure.
Well, it's nice to meet a kindred spirit, Josh.
Absolutely. Like what you see here at WHAM, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, we can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we're so heavily demonetized and censored and shadow banned. It's getting really bad, folks. If everyone just gave $1 single a month to, say, Patreon or our Subscribestar, where we do subscriber-only content, we could really get out of this rut that we are currently in as YouTube tries to stifle independent media and prop up the mainstream media. This is really important. This is one of the most important times in independent media history for us to say it's now or never. Let's keep moving forward and let's be that change that we wish to see in the world. Of course, there's also our Bitcoin address below as well as on the screen for you to scan if if you please. And of course, we got events coming up. So make sure to check us out at anarchovegas.com. Anarchovegas.com. Use promo code WAM, that's WAM, for a 10% discount on your tickets. It's on July 19th, 20th, and 21st in, of course, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's anarchovegas.com. Make sure to check us out there and find us on websites like BitTube and Minds, and just try to support independent media, if not myself, any of the other big independent medias out there, to help us continuously bring our message to you free of charge so that we can really change the guard as we move forward into a dramatically polarized, crazy future. Let's try to make it as sustainable as possible. It comes down to you guys. You are the change you wish to see. You guys will help us get through these tough times. So anyway, check out all those links. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.